So I have been going through a really intense grieving process. I recently lost my favorite cousin, my first cousin. His father and my father were brothers. Um, and it's just been hard. I don't think I've ever gone through grief like this before. And where there's just a heaviness every day. You wake up and you're like, this has got to be a bad dream. And even as I am grieving, and my grief feels this horrific. I mean, it is so heavy. Like, people can tell it has affected my whole personality. My kids, my husband, like, babe, you just are struggling. I'm not the joyful self I usually am. I was at church and a friend of mine was like, you're not the same. What's wrong? She didn't know a thing about what had happened. I was like, I've lost my cousin. I cannot get myself together. It also creates a paranoia that, Lord, who else that I love will you take from me? And so if this is my grief and I'm just his first cousin, whew, I can't imagine the grief of his wife, children, and brothers. Like, it must be incredible. Um, I wonder if sometimes when people die through illness, um, is that a more gracious way? I don't know. I'm trying to process. Because he was taken very suddenly. And when I say this was not on anyone's radar, like, this is his very being was so eternal. You could not, and beautiful and wonderful. Like, you just, him dying, just, it was just the farthest thing from anyone's mind. And, but God saw fit to take him home. And I am sad and I can't get over the sadness. For a while, it was very paralyzing. I'm finally able to do things, but my mind is foggy and it's just rough. And I've been really trying to think through what is God's way of dealing with grief. I know He gives us wisdom for that. And I think about the scripture that says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And I think that is not just a feel-good verse. I think that's a verse that talks about humanity, that grieving is a part of life, but you will come out into the light at some point if you go through the process, if you walk through the night. Or like when I think about verses like, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will feel no evil because thou art with me. I feel like there are verses in scripture that give us an understanding of human life, that we can't escape grief, loss, bad things happening. We can't escape it, but we have to go through it. We have to allow it to run its course and make it to the other side. A lot of times people don't allow the process to finish, and they'll do something to try to stop the grief that makes it worse. Or they'll take their life or something like that, that they don't allow God's natural, like He made all of human beings to be able to become strong through their grief and to come out on the other side. And a perfect example of this is a friend of mine. We didn't know each other personally, but we were good friends at work. And she was married to her high school sweetheart. She was considerably older than myself. And she loved this man. They did so many things together. And they were inseparable. And she traveled a lot for work. So they had this routine where he would drop her off at the airport and then wait by his phone for her to call him to say she made it to her hotel safely. They were religious with it. And so when she got to her hotel, she called him and he did not pick up. And because this had been their faithful routine for all the many, many years they were married, she knew immediately something was wrong. So she had someone go to the house. And sure enough, it seems like he dropped her off at the airport, walked in the house, and I think he died of a heart attack right there by the phone. And she's way far away from him at work. She has to get home. And it was just all so sudden. It wasn't on her radar. And it wasn't on my radar. I didn't know him. But just this tragedy that came into her life so suddenly, it caused me to cry. I grieved with her. And I would ask her, like, what are you going to do? Like, how do you stop this grief? It seems so unimaginable. Surely there must be something you do. And she said, well, the first thing I want to do is I want to ask you to come sit with me with some other friends, and can I just talk about my husband with you? And would you bring a poem or something inspirational to read to me? So a small group of us, went to be with her, and we cried together. We read poems to her. She talked about her husband, and it helped her. It didn't take away the pain, but the feeling of I'm not alone, that people would be willing to come around me and encourage me, was very comforting to her. That was the first thing she did. And so my cousins and I did that last night through texting. One of my cousins wrote this beautiful poem about him. So she shared that poem, and it was just so beautiful, and it encouraged all of us. And another cousin shared scripture. We shared clips of the funeral where my dad preached a word that was so comforting. And we just spent time crying and grieving. And the reason why yesterday was so important was because yesterday was his birthday. And my birthday and his birthday were a week apart, and I always got a birthday text, and then I would send him a happy birthday, and of course that didn't happen. And one of the things I thought of yesterday was that he is spending his birthday with Jesus. And even through all my sorrow and grief and missing him, there's a scripture that says, precious in the eyes of the Lord are the death of his saints. He is like, the joy he's having is something we cannot even imagine. He is thrilled, and he's probably having so much fun with the Lord, the angels, his mother and father, and everyone who's gone before. They might not really be thinking about us like that while we're left here grieving. And he was a musician, so I can imagine him just enjoying music and just having the time of his life for his birthday, even while we're here grieving. And that's a hard truth to process, to think that he's not missing us like we're missing him, but it's what is happening right now. And so then I asked my friend again, now that we've gone through this process where we're grieving together, we've cried together, what are you going to do now? And she said, I believe that human nature was meant to grieve, and it's a natural part of life. And when we try to interfere with it, we make it worse. So I'm going to sit in my grief. And I was like, well, why don't you move out of your house? Why don't you go be near your family? She said, no. She said, I want to look at his pictures. I want to think of him. I want to be in our space that we lived together for many years. And I'm going to sit in this grief. And I'm going to let this grief run its natural course until I am stronger. I said, well, are you going to stop and take a break from work? She said, no, because work brings me joy. I'm not going to change anything. I'm going to let things happen naturally. And I just think that is the most practical advice I've ever had about grief. And I've lost people before. I've never lost someone this close to me before, but I've tried this in other situations, and it really does work. And I've seen other people do it. It really does work. It just takes time. And I'm going to do that with this. I'm going to look at his cute little precious picture, those dimples, his smile. I can hear him giggling. He had this laugh that was infectious. I'm going to love people the way he loved us. He really loved me unconditionally. He knew me really well. I could confide in him a lot. And I believe he loved me for who I was. And I'm going to remember that. And I'm going to sit in his grief, and I'm going to remember him. I'm going to allow his life to inspire me. And I'm going to hold on to that verse that says, again, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. And I'm going to hold on to that and know that one day we are going to see the light. We're not going to ever forget him. And we're never going to stop grieving. But God has made us to get stronger through our grief if we handle it right. And I hope this encourages someone today.